Welcome to Lighting the Void.
Broadcasting live from Daytona Beach. This is Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Roop, and we're live on Fringe FM, KTLK, digital broadcasting. It is 7 after 10 on the East Coast, 7 after 7 on the West Coast, September the 21st, 2023. I don't even know what freaking year it is, but we're live, and it's all unscreened. It's all undone here. There is no structure except for like breaks and stuff. And tonight we're going to be talking to the one and only Juan Ayala. We're going to be speaking about the occult, the homunculus. This guy's got a whole way of life over here, man. I think it's impressive. When we first started talking to Juan, I recognized just how quick this. I thought, man, this guy's got something. He's going to be moving up. He's got something to offer. And haven't had him on in a long time, but sure enough, he's crushing it, man. He's crushing it on YouTube. He's crushing it on the podcast world. He's ranked in the top 1.5% of podcasters already and moving up. And also, before we start this, I want to say we really, really need your freaking help and support. We've got machines to pay for. Obviously, they're not working for a reason right now. And that could be why. I don't know. It's too late in the night to tell. But I can tell you this. If you don't want to donate, just give us your money, right? Like, if you don't want to give us your money, then just say, I have an offer for you. So, Magical Egypt's entire thing, that includes the first series with John Anthony West, the second series, the third series, the Women of Wisdom, the Great Work, the Thoth sexual transformation course on the tarot with Lon Malo Duquette, a key to the summit all month long. Everything Magical Egypt has to offer is usually $199. But if you go to fringe.fm/me or ME, however you want to do that, or fringe.fm/Magical Egypt, you can get it for half off. Just $99. You get everything they've ever had to offer, plus the summit. Right, so go to that link, and that'll get you something too, and that'll help support us as well. So Juan Ayala is here, and we might open the phone lines up shortly too. We'll have the it'll be 501-777-5631 if we do. And Juan is just truth seeking, podcasting. He's an animal, dude. He's got people on, big time guests now coming on his show on YouTube. And his podcast. How many episodes you got out now, Juan, by the way?
I'm up to 170, 180, I think now.
Yeah, getting on up there, man. What do you think?
Good.
You hate people yet?
No, I hate everybody equally, bro. I don't I don't have any favorites, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think when you and I first got together, I think it was in, I want to say 2020, bro. And I think we got together when I had 45 episodes.
Yeah, something like that.
The first time we ever linked up. So it's been a minute now. But yeah, no, I hate everyone equally.
Right on.
I'm just kidding. I don't hate anybody. Love each other and be good people to one another.
Well, I disappeared from the community. Like, I still come into the chat rooms and say hi and stuff like that every now and then, but it just got too much for me, you know? I'm
a lurker. I'm a lurker too. I lurk and I'll chime in every now and again.
Like, I don't know how to deal with
stuff
it.
Like that.
I don't know how to deal with it. I really don't, because people hit me up on Facebook sometimes and be like, hey, how are you? You know? And it's like, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, email, and it kind of wigs me out. I'm almost afraid to respond. Like, I have some kind of trauma in this thing. I think I've been traumatized by the podcasting world. I've been doing it for a while though. So
yeah, you've been around for a minute. Have you ever had anybody write you an email telling you about how they're a homunculus and if you can help them out?
No, dude, you got to explain this homunculus thing. I don't know we've talked about it before, but like, you got to talk about this, bro.
Have we talked about it on this show before?
I know you've brought it up, but I don't. Maybe it was on the phone, but I'm not understanding. When I hear the word homunculus, I think of a weird like chimp or something. That's what I think.
You're in for a treat then, Joe, because the whole thing about the homunculus, it's when you hear stories, it's one of those topics where it is a reality because they are. Like the other day, people were flipping out because, and I got probably like at least collectively 30 to 40 DMs, messages, text messages, and combined about. They came out and they said that they had created an entity from nothing, not from male or female. They had created some entity in a lab, like this thing. Earlier before that, they had come out with they had made I forgot what it was. It was a fetus without male or female or something like that, without a father. So this stuff is out there. And when you see it in the mainstream, if it's mainstream, they've had this for years. And these are the stories of the alchemists when they're writing about these little men, the homunculi, in these flasks. Okay, so they were writing about this thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago in these stories. But they're stories.
They weren't fetuses.
They weren't fetuses. They were fully grown little. So homunculus is Latin for little man, miniature man. And it appeared in 16th century with Paracelsus, which I'm sure you're familiar with Paracelsus, the father of modern day toxicology, and he's attributed to a lot of different things. He was the one that came up with it. But it's one of these topics that when you talk to somebody about it, they're so fascinated with it because not only is it connected to a plethora of topics throughout everywhere, but it's one of those things where it's like, is it BS or is it really something? And I believe it really is something. And if there's the homunculus, even Crowley wrote about it, you can even break it down as simply as this elite family planned the birthday of said son because they wanted that favorable astrological alignment for whatever reason. Crowley wrote about the moon children. The moon children is another spin on the homunculus, right? So essentially what a homunculus is, and it morphs throughout history. And this is in my studies of the occult and my studies of everything, of reality itself, the more I look at it, the more it changes, right? And I did an interview actually today with the head of the Typhonian OTO, Michael Staley. Shout out to him. I did an interview with him today, and he said something that stuck to me. He's like, when you're searching for the ultimate, for the source, for the one, for the thing, for the whatever it is, right? The Godhead, whatever it is. When you feel like you've gotten there, you've reached it, it continues, it keeps going. And I think that's where I'm at with reality right now, where it's continuously morphing into something else. The more you look into it, right, it just keeps changing. So the homunculus, essentially what it is a magical little man. Now, the alchemists would take this little man and use it for magical purposes. They would vivisect it or dissect it and use its various parts to do magical operations. And there's grimoires about this, Joe. There's grimoires written as far back as, I think the oldest one that I've come across is the 9th century. And I'm sure there's others before that, about these creations that they were doing in the lab, these chimeras that they were making, and they were dissecting them and doing stuff to gain godlike powers. So it's a very abstract concept, and it's come into the mainstream limelight as of recently because they're coming out with all this stuff, this lab grown meat now that they approve for you to eat. So I call it homunc meat because it's alchemically grown somewhere and they're just feeding it to you. Can you imagine what that does to you? So a lot of people have been hitting me up, and I've been talking about this for a little while, and people made fun of me at first, but it even goes as far as, Joe, the 16th century architects were calling their buildings homunculus. Their entire building.
So how tiny are these things? Like,
I wouldn't know how to. So if you look up the Guinness World Record, whatever, however you say it, there is an actual world record for the world's largest homunculus, and it's from this guy. So, and this is, folks, you can look this up, www.Guinness or GuinnessWorldRecords.com, largest homunculi. So this was from the 1500s, from this story. This is the first ever account I came across, Count Johann Ferdinand von Kufstein. And apparently he was a Freemason who created 10 homunculi in his lodge. And they would do seances around these homunculus because the homunculus is magical, Joe. So these homunculus, they prophesize to you. They tell you the future. They divinate for you. And according to Paracelsus, if you let them grow into old age, they also turn into dwarfs, gnomes, goblins, giants sometimes. It's really weird. Again, this is stuff that's out there. So the size of our homunculus here was 30 centimeters tall. He had 8 of them.
That's not very, that's tiny.
So 30 centimeters, 2 inches for our American listeners. That's about a foot tall. So a foot tall little man that you could do magical stuff with, and it would tell you the future.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that, Joe?
That's tiny. And it says here that according to the works of the alchemist Paracelsus, who I follow a lot, says that a homunculus is a living construct similar somewhat to a golem of the Jewish folklore. Mm-hmm. It's a being produced from the sperm of a dying man left to congeal in the womb of a horse, eventually taking on a human-like form.
Joe,
dude,
it's even a metaphysical. And by the way, Joe, we have a 33-page long homunculus owner's manual. Okay, which you can get on my website, TJLJP. It's published by Paranoid American. You can get it on my website. It's the whole history of the homunculus, 33 pages. Okay,
in comic book
we
form.
Yeah, like it's a comic book, exactly. And we broke it down in a chronological order, right? From its origins all the way to the what I believe was the Abstinian homunculi, which I think that they were doing some shenanigans in the desert, because this homunculus concept, it plays a role into, it could be like an egregore or a tulpa as well, like this astral servant, if you will, right? Like this thought form that you can animate to do things for you. I've also heard people use homunculus in their mind palaces to help clean up some rooms, to make room for some more things. So again, it's very deep. And my favorite version of it is the more metaphysical, the Taoist homunculus, the little golden man. They didn't call it a homunculus until the 16th century, but the Taoists, they believed that they could meditate for over 100 days and they could reverse right through semen retention, because back then they believed in preformationism, which essentially is that everything that exists big in the world existed as a miniature version of itself. So back then they literally believed that in semen there was a little man, literally inside the sperm, that was sitting there, and it would grow in the womb of the woman into a baby, right? So, which they weren't too far off, okay, except it wasn't a version of a little baby inside there, okay? And they believed through semen retention and through meditation, they could reverse this, what they call the way, the light, in on itself. And they would, it's funny how history repeats itself, but they would impregnate themselves, okay? These monks would impregnate themselves, and I'm talking about 2300 BCE. So I'm talking about like old, okay, like way back. And they would reverse this light in on itself, and it would congeal together to form a being that would come out from your solar plex and project outwards, and it would take on a consciousness of its own. And the purpose of that little golden being, that little homunculus, was to exist in this reality for that monk, so he was able to escape samsara or reincarnation or whatever it was that he was trying to escape, and could actually, when he would pass away, he would be able to go on and actually pass instead of being reincarnated again. And if you think of the lure of like the leprechaun, right? Because homunculus also help you find gold and treasures and different things that are hidden in the world, that are occulted in the world. Or if you think about a leprechaun, what does a leprechaun do? Well, a leprechaun helps you find gold. And he's what? He's like a little miniature man running around. So you start to look at all these different lures, and it's not just the leprechaun. I mean, there's different stories of elementals, right? It could also be related to elementals and the gnomes and the fae, the fairies, and all that stuff. So it's very interesting. But essentially, yeah, it's an artificially created magical being. And the reason that it's magical, it's because it comes from the art, the great work, right? Alchemy.
All right.
And therefore,
but real talk here. Real talk though. Like, do you think anybody actually created one of these things?
There's a possibility. There's a possibility because, I mean, if you understand the concept of, dude, they're growing lambs in artificial matrices. Okay, they're a test tube baby essentially is that. If you really think about the concept, if you really think of a test tube baby, that's essentially what a homunculus is. Now, I'm not saying all babies are homunculus. I call my kids homunculus, but that's just me, okay? Because I'm Juan on Juan. But think about that, right? And if they're putting this stuff out, they just came out last week, Joe, or the week before. They created an entity. Now, you get into the ethics of it, dude. You get into the ethics of, does that entity, right? Do they have to pay taxes? Do they get a social security number? Are they part of this society that we live in? Do they have rights? What's going on?
Well, I mean, if it's like a golem, like Paracelsus say, I don't think they would have rights. I think they would be an animal, so to speak, somewhere between. I don't know, man. This is freaky stuff. See, this stuff right here is exactly why people, and rightly so, should be wary of the occult, right? Because you get into this stuff and it's all beautiful teachings and there's lots of cool stuff you learn and spirituality. And then all of a sudden they're impregnating horses, making 30 centimeter tall dudes to do what? To do magical favors for them, right? Like it doesn't sit right in my gut.
So you're absolutely right, because, and this is something that I get criticized for when it comes to like my show, that allegedly I focus too much on like the darker aspects, but hear me out. I think the stuff that I focus on is the coolest stuff. Okay. Like the interesting stuff, right? Like again, I'm into Dungeons and Dragons. So anything that has to do with like magic, like the crazy stuff, like that's where I'm at. Right.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. I think that because Crowley in the 20th century, he took the concept, and I think that magical practices are meant to be evolved, changed up, and adapted to whatever the practitioner wants to do with it, right? So you have, for example, John Dee and Edward Kelly coming up with the Enochian system. And then you have the OTO taking that same system and modifying it to fit their needs. And then you have Crowley using that same system, right? So Crowley took the concept of the homunculus and changed it up. And he was like, hey, listen, up until the second month, that fetus has no soul. And he wrote about this. There's literature about this. That fetus has no soul. So therefore, we can invoke an entity into that fetus. And it's going to grow up to be a regular little baby, a little person. It's going to grow up like a regular person, except it's going to have the essence or the soul of that elemental, right? You have L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons, which I've talked about on your show before.
Yeah.
They were trying to also summon an elemental, right? So, and he was following the teachings of Crowley. He was reading his work, and he had modified Crowley's system to fit his needs, to be able to manifest this. It was a woman, it was Margie Cameron. So a femunculus, which would be the the female version of a homunculus. But I think, Joe, that some of the people in power, politicians, a lot of these powerful elite families could potentially be a form of homunculi. And one of my favorite animes, I don't know if you watch anime. I know you're a grown man, Joe, but
no, I play Genshin Impact on my phone, dude.
So Full Metal Alchemist, spoiler alert, the bad guys in that show, they're all homunculus. So like the main people, the elites, quote unquote, are homunculus. So, and I think this is where art imitates life or life imitates art, whatever. I don't know what's going on, but there's like this revelation of method in all these movies that they put out. If you look at Neo in the Matrix, Neo was what? Artificially grown in a pod. Right? So he is a form of a homunculus in a way. He was artificially created.
What are you saying, man? Are you saying that there are homunculus amongst us right now?
There is a large percentage of the population, Joe, that doesn't have an inner monologue. And I'm here to present the information, Joe, and people can do whatever they want with it. But if I had to put my guess on, instead of there being, NPCs, how people say, well, maybe there's homunculus riding around. And they were debating as early as the 14th century. They were debating the ethics of the homunculus because there's stories of church doctors. Okay. Because back then, alchemy, the art, it was natural magic, Joe. It was okay. It was good because God wouldn't put these ingredients in nature if he was okay with us, not okay with us in intermingling these ingredients. And what happens if I mix A plus B and get C? It's okay because God put it in nature. And therefore, I'm only exposing the physician magician. Back then, it was the same thing. They were exposing the occulted attributes and aspects of nature in favor of man. So they were deconstructing nature, and it was okay as long as you didn't use any outside forces to aid you in your operations. You were A-okay. So no theurgy, which is asking for help up above.
Sure.
And that could be demonic or angelic, whatever. As long as you weren't doing that, it was all natural. It was game. So there were these church doctors. There's a story of Arnaldo de Villanova where he would create homunculus. And as soon as they would come to life, Joe, he would destroy them. And people are like, dude, what are you doing? He's like, listen, I don't know if God died for the sins of that homunculus. And also, I don't know if whatever soul or entity is going to take over that vessel, if it's going to be good or evil. So before that can happen, I'm going to destroy it. And you're having those same ethical questions come into play today. When it comes to this whole grow a whole model of human embryo without using sperm, eggs, or a womb. So they're creating entities in labs. This is what all these movies are about. And what happens at the end, Joe? What happens always? It's typical Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah.
What happens? The creation always goes wild, right? Yeah, that's the goal.
It turns on you, man. Every story, it turns on you.
Absolutely. I mean, so history doesn't repeat itself. It often rhymes, right, as they say. But I think if they were just stories, Joe, and there's nothing else to it. And I wonder about this every single day, right? If it was all mental or whatever it was, that's up for debate. And again, I'm here to just present the ideas, present the literature in a digestible format. And people can take that information and do whatever they want with it and make their own assumptions. But if I had to put my money on it, I do think that people in power, it could be as simple as aligning their birth date to a favorable astrological alignment. A lot of celebrities also, it's a trend that you see over and over again, have surrogate births. So what's all that about? Technically, it's a hermetically sealed vessel carrying a person. in the Paracelsian view, Joe, that would be a homunculus. I don't know. I'm just pointing it out. You know, I'm just the coincidences, right? So, yeah, not to alarm you. I know you're probably thinking that your neighbor's a homunculus right now, but
well, I was thinking about like, what is that little creature that? He's not a creature. That's a terrible thing to say. Like this little, this guy with like growth, Hezbollah or whatever, Hezbollah.
Oh.
Like, is that a homunculus? Because he kind of creeps me out a little bit. I'm just being honest with you.
Dude, I get that question probably like at least once a month. Really? I'll have somebody tag me in a video of him.
Really?
Yeah, dude, for like, they'll tag me in a video of him.
He's the smallest man that we know of, right? Like,
I don't know if he is or not.
As far as like that we know of, that I know of, he's the smallest dude.
He's 3'4".
That's a lot taller than the 30 centimeters, though.
Yeah, that is. That's 102 centimeters, bro. That's too big to be a homunculus.
You realize how absolutely crazy this sounds, though.
Dude, don't you think... I've been talking about this for like 2 years now. Don't you think... Yeah, I know it sounds crazy, but that's
kind of a redundant question. Yeah.
It's a concept that, like, everyone that I talked... It's always that they're super fascinated with it because it is a possibility, Joe. Like, that's the thing. It could be real. Now, if these alchemists were actually doing it or not, I mean, we know, again, Manly P. Hall says, woe to those who take the allegorical ramblings, I think it is, of the alchemist is true, or, you know, at face value. You get what I'm saying. I'm paraphrasing it, but I think we also have to be wary of that they were speaking in allegory and symbolism. But what weird symbolism to use, right? What weird things to occult the whatever else other operation you were doing with these symbols. Because one of my favorite recipes, Joe, to create one of these homunculus, because there's entire books on how to create them. Right. Where you follow the steps. And my favorite one is you have to beat the carcass of a cow with the largest dog penis you're able to find. Now, whoa. I know, listen, Joe, I know you're alarmed.
Now. Really?
Listen, how do you go about acquiring the largest dog penis there is? And how do you know you have the largest one when you acquire it? How do you compare? You know what I'm saying? Like, they didn't put those instructions in the grimoire. They put everything else that you have to do, but they're like, how do I know I have the biggest one?
Yeah.
And like, what?
This is getting... Okay, go ahead. I'm not slowing you down here on this one.
I'm just saying, dude, that's one of my favorite recipes. It sounds funny, but when you really start to think of the logistics of creating that, you go, you know, how am I going to pull this off? And again, what weird symbolism, right? It says it. You beat the carcass to a pulp, not just beat it. You have to beat it to a pulp with the biggest dog phallus you can find. What does that even mean?
Oh, dude, that's crazy.
That's wild, right? And it's crazy. What's also crazy, Joe, is that there's been interpretations of this work, and some people even go as far to say that these homunculi are actually artificial demons. Okay, and it kind of makes sense, right? You're creating this artificial demonic being, or you're creating a vessel for demonic entities to enter. And if you really think about it, Joe, if you trace back the origins of alchemy, right? If you trace back the lineage, it goes back to the line of Noah and all these, I believe, were great alchemists, right? Noah and his family and his lineage were great alchemists, I believe. And if you go back far enough, it was the Nephilim that introduced the concept of alchemy to, right, the daughters of men, right? In exchange for their pleasures, they taught them, right, metallurgy and all these different things, how to work with herbs, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know if you've ever read that story, but they kind of got destroyed, and they're not happy about, right, when the flood comes and destroys all the Nephilim and all these chimeras that were going on back then as well. But what a better way to maybe perhaps reanimate into this reality again if you gave the secrets to these people as alchemy, and then those same people that you taught the alchemy to would create these vessels for you then to inhabit, right? And go into after the fact. Because they say that that's how the origins of these demonic entities came into being, when all these Nephilim and these chimeras and everything were killed off. Well, energy cannot be created nor destroyed, right? It can only be transformed. So those spirits of those Nephilim went somewhere and they're pissed because they got destroyed. So again, just something to think about, because it's a very interesting concept that maybe perhaps the same art was predestined for something, right? We always hear about how all these celebrities, let's say that they are homunculi, right? They're worshiping the devil, or they're doing some weird stuff, right? They do weird stuff. Okay. They do weird things when it comes to these Super Bowl. What is it? They do these halftime shows, whatever it is. They have some weird symbology in those things. And I think that this is all right. Some of it might be occult. I don't know. You know, some people say, oh, they're just being edgy and they're using all this symbolism. I don't know. I mean, when you start to line up, right, the coincidences over and over, how many times does it need to happen over and over again before you stop calling it a coincidence, right?
Well, I mean, you got a point, man. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that I think I don't think that Crowley's Moonchild was that. What makes you think that that's what he was talking about with the Moonchild?
Because it's in the literature. He literally calls it a homunculus.
Well,
they talk about the homunculus concept in that actual book. And he wrote Liber something or other. I can find it for you. Liber, where it's how to create a homunculus.
Libers, right?
One of his many Libers, yeah. But and in the book, they also talk about the concept of the homunculus, by name, homunculus. So again, this is something that he was interested in. And I think that people who followed him probably picked up on this, and maybe they changed it up. And I think that how Manly P. Hall writes, right, the modern day alchemist, you know, the cave that they're in is replaced with 4 walls. So if you really think about you have the light side and the dark side. Well, I think that the modern day alchemist is the same thing. It's like I think it's all like the Force, Joe. I think you can tap into and use it for good, how you can use it for evil, right? It's whoever is wielding what do they say, that saying? Whoever's wielding the pen or the sword or whatever it is. Yeah. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that there is the same practices, and the beautiful part about alchemy, and it's an interdimensional topic, as I call it all the time, because it really, you can talk about it for hours and hours and just peel it apart. And the more I look into it, the more I don't know what it is. But we have to understand that the practices that they were doing in the lab, right? These alchemists were conducting in these lab settings. Those practices, right, that they were using to achieve the elixir of life, the philosopher's stone, the homunculus, whatever they were trying to do, those same practices, even if those alchemists were using it for some metaphysical means, those are the same practices that developed into chemistry that we know today. So the woo-woo, right? They had some practical alchemy in there with the woo-woo. Paracelsus says you can't achieve the great work or the magnum opus without first transforming yourself. Because the alchemist is working on multiple layers of reality simultaneously. You have Carl Jung. Carl Jung was also talking about the proto-homunculus in the works of Zosimos of Panopolis, which was one of the first alchemists, one of the oldest alchemists that we have written documents of. Zosimos of Panopolis, 3rd to 4th century. He was a Gnostic as well, and he was writing about these entities. He called it an anthroparion, and Carl Jung did a commentary on that, saying that could have been the first mention ever of a homunculus, so like a proto-homunculus, if you will. And Carl Jung being one of these people who was also very interested in alchemy and what it had to offer. And one of the things that he says is that these alchemists were having results, maybe not literal results in this existence as you and I know it, right? This stuff that we can touch and feel, but on a psychological level, they were having results. And I recently translated this video of this guy who wrote about Fulcanelli, and he was supposedly the pupil of Eugene Consoliet, which was the pupil of Fulcanelli. And in that, he writes that they do a transmutation on camera, and they form this elixir, this thing, and they analyze it in a lab, like by actual chemists. And the elixir itself was like, they were commenting on, they're like, listen, it doesn't have any medicinal benefits. It doesn't have anything that would benefit your health or anything like that. Maybe it has minerals and you can drink and you're going to get your whatever mineral that you're going to get, right, that you need, that they have in vitamins nowadays. But he goes, but maybe perhaps the placebo effect of the alchemists or whoever on the other side was drinking this thing, this concoction, maybe by them believing that they were going to get better for whatever reason that they were taking it.
That could definitely happen, man, for sure. But the placebo effect's pretty powerful. That is kind of magic, like you're saying, right? Mm-hmm. But to what point is it powerful enough to manifest or believe that there are little men running around? Like, man, but then there's been sightings of little dudes too, like here and there, you know. Just weird, creepy little dudes in the woods that have been called cryptids and stuff. So I don't know. It's possible. Like, it's definitely possible.
Greer recently came out and they said, and this is their words, and again, if you want to take Greer's word for it or not, they said that the gray entities that we know as aliens, right? And I know that that's been a hot topic lately in the news. We had the Mexican, whatever that thing was that they came out with, right? I'm sure you saw it. But Greer said that the gray entities that we know as aliens or ETs are actually grown, right? Synthetic beings created by the government. And those are the ones responsible for the abductions that are happening and the cow mutilations. Now, think of the phenomenon of the cow mutilation phenomenon and how, so we're talking about homunculus. That's bizarre. Well, crop circles are really bizarre. Cow mutilations are really bizarre, but think about the cow mutilation. I mentioned about the cow carcass and the dog phallus earlier. Okay. What do you think they're doing with everything that they're taking from these cows? Are they maybe perhaps, right? Because you can, from what I've read, you can use the blood of cows and they could substitute, I think, blood for humans or something other like that. Something along those lines. Again, I'd have to pull it up, but what if they're taking these organs and all these things from these cows and taking it to some lab somewhere? And I don't know, growing stuff. I mean, they already came out and said, we're growing entities with false matrices, right? They're testing the waters just to tip at first, Joe, just to see how people take it. And then right after that, that's where they go all the way in and they, right? So I think that they disclose that these gray alien entities are a version of homunculus. And now you can throw out the word homunculus and just use artificially created being. Same thing, right? So I think that the tech has changed from the very beginning. I think that alchemy was a tech and they've used those same principles and they just add stuff to it. It gets prettier the way that they're able to do it and more efficient, right? So I don't know.
Well, dude, that's a lot. That is a lot to talk about, man, because I'm so consumed with the out of body experience, the hermetics of it all and how everything works that these little like dark things kind of slip my mind sometimes.
Well, I got something for you, Joe.
I mean, for sure. Like even Manly P. Hall used to talk about like, oh, I got this skull of this guy in my room that I'm working on and It's like, what? Like, I would just kind of brush past that thinking, okay, well, you're trying to find some alchemical thing going on with the guy's brain, whatever, cool. But it kind of sunk in later. I'm like, who does that?
Well,
who's brushing skulls in the back room, you know?
You know, I stumbled across Homunculus while reading Manly P. Hall. He published that story of Johann von Kufstein, whatever his name is. And he published that in one of his journals in, I forget exactly what year, but that's how I stumbled across it. So Manly P. Hall was writing about this phenomenon. But I got a better one for you, because you know you're talking about the outer body experiences, the astral projection, all these different things, which I for a while, and I know I said it on the show a while back, I had sleep paralysis for an extended period of time. It was like almost every night for like 2 or 3 years.
Right.
And then it just stopped out of nowhere. It just stopped. I stopped having it. But I would have the sleep paralysis, and I got good enough to where I could wake myself up out of it. Right. You can just like peel yourself back in. But I would have the sense of dread. I could feel that something was watching me, or like I felt like an anxiety. But I would never see the entities. I would never see, right, the hag sitting on your chest or the shadow people in the corner. I would never see that. Right? But I have this other show that I do. It's called the Occult Book Club. And what we do is we search for obscure occult literature. And by occult, I mean hidden, lost, whatever. And the term watchers, right? I know that we talked about the Nephilim a little bit at the beginning, the watchers. Well, the term watcher really takes on various meanings when you start to really dive into the occult and all these different. The watchers, when I first came across it, were, right, these watchers that would watch over humanity along with the Nephilim, and they were just kind of put in charge of this experiment that was going on, whatever. It was kind of weird. And then when you start to read these, it's actually a Freemasonic point of view, but when you start to read these texts, they talk about the watchers are watching the divine alchemist, which is God, create and uncreate, right? Transmute reality into existence. That's okay. That's a weird. And if you think about that, that would make sense, because if they're watching the divine alchemist at work and they're learning the secrets, look at what happened to Enoch. What happened to Enoch? He turned into Metatron after that, after everything he was shown. And I think this is what they're occulting, Joe. I think this is what they don't want people to know. And this is why they occult all these different secrets, because Enoch was able to transform into this entity that controls reality itself, an angel, Metatron. And if you think about alchemy, when you achieve the magnum opus, and as the magnum opus is happening, the light from that reaction activates something in your DNA where you're able to step outside of space and time and manipulate reality from the outside. Falconelli talked about this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's like, the secret of alchemy is being able to step outside of space and time and manipulate reality from the outside. I mean, what elite wouldn't want that?
That is, well, yeah, I was going to come on your show. We can then talk about that. That's a whole other show, man. But that is what the puffer. So if you take the puffers, the spiritual alchemy, all of the fundamentals of the stages of alchemy work the same in reality and physical reality, and spirituality. Energetically is where they don't really get into, because that's the biggest secret, because you're supposed to turn into this energetic being of, quote, light, but we can call it light because we don't have another word for it, but a being that can travel into the astral realms through space and time, through starlight, where you're no longer glued to the lead of planets. Right. So this is like in Revelations, they talk about you could take the river of life freely. So your consciousness goes up to this level that's not so dense anymore, where you can travel through space and time. And physics has already showed us that from starlight to Earth, it's crazy. It's instantaneous for them. There's no time realistically, but all our time is perception. It's a pretty trippy thing, because it's all starting to come together.
What did Crowley say? We are all stars. Maybe he was onto something. Maybe not.
Yeah. And he's not the only one. There are several theosophists that said it. Like, when you see, this is what I've been trying to tell people for a long time, years now. And I bring it up, like, I peeled myself out of body. I didn't dream. I didn't wake up and go, oh, I'm in a dream, I think. Or, I'm a lucid dreamer. Dude, I peeled myself out of body. I watched myself sleep. I experimented by beating on desks and watching my son jerk his head when I was hitting the desks. There was an energetic form that was me outside of my body. And it was hard to maintain that form. It was hard. Like, I was getting pulled back, and then when I tried to do it again, sometimes I was blind and other things would happen. But I saw it, dude. I experienced it. So that's, according to the alchemist, that is just like the second level. You're just barely moving into the world of Yetzirah, the astral world. And then that world of chaos is where the real alchemy starts happening, because everything happens so fast up there too, emotionally, mentally, and psychologically. So if you're not prepared as a vessel to do that, which is what alchemy's trying to teach you, you're not going to go star walking, dude.
My favorite episode that I've ever done in my podcasting career was the Occult Book Club number 10, The Voyage to a World of Cartesius. Now, it's a book from the 17th century, I believe. And it was written by this guy with two first names, Gabriel Daniel, two biblical names too on top of that. And there's really no information on him other than that I think he was a monk or something like that. Yeah. And he was a René Descartes esotericist. Okay. And René Descartes is a very interesting character because he was talking about the mind-body split, right? The mind-body dualism. And we're talking about being able to leave your body and project your consciousness into other realms. Well, in this particular book, it's fictional, quote unquote. But we know that occultists like to, right, put a veil over their actual workings in a fictional setting, right? So just take that. I believe that we stumbled across a grimoire that was telling more than meets the eye in this story. And essentially what the story is about René Descartes finding, and I remember reading the mainstream history of René Descartes and how he had figured out, right, through a series of dreams, he had figured out the greatest science, right, the greatest secret that was going to transform everything. And it was, according to mainstream science, it was the Cartesian coordinate system, which that's a whole other conversation. But in this book, he figures out a way to project your consciousness into these other realms. And this book, I believe from 1692, was the first time ever that they had used the term outer space in the sci-fi sense of like outer space. Now, some people think space is fake and gay, but that's a whole other conversation. But essentially in this story, René Descartes is able to project his consciousness outward into these other realms, into these other worlds. They travel to these other universes that are run by different philosophers and all these different things. And in these other worlds, they're showing the main guy in the story how they create and uncreate reality alchemically, right? They're showing him all the secrets of everything. But there's one interesting aspect to this entire thing, this entire story. And one thing that stood out to me as soon as we were reading through it, taking notes, right? Processing the information. There's one thing that stood out to me more than anything else. And it was that when you project your consciousness outside of your body and you go into these other realms and you're gone for days at a time, there is a little entity, Joe, that enters your body and watches over your body for you. A little black homunculus, as I termed it. They call it a small black Moor in the book. And this little homunculus does all the bare minimum for you. It'll eat for you. It'll very NPC, like it'll bathe you, It'll do all these different things for you while you're gone doing your astral shenanigans.
Oh, nice. Okay.
But there's one thing that it can't do, and there's one flaw, one major flaw. You can't have any deep conversations with this thing because it flips out. Okay.
Wait,
and
what? You can't. It'll just flip out, huh?
It'll short circuit. You can't have a deep conversation. And again, I know a lot of people like that. You can't have deep conversations with. Am I saying that they were taken over by Homunculus? No, I'm just saying. Now, there's shows.
But you did implant that thought just by asking that, just by saying that, though.
There's a show called Peripheral, and I think it came out in 2022 or 2023. And I'm not going to spoil the show, but there's a concept similar to what I'm talking about. And it makes you think where Hollywood gets their ideas from, because they're reading these same occult books that we're looking into, and they're taking these concepts and putting it into their movies. Now, there is a danger in doing this, Joe, where and I think in the Picatrix, there's also that you can invoke a watcher to watch over your body while you're in the astral realm. Yeah. There's one important thing that might happen, and that could possibly happen when you go back to enter your body. This little entity can tell you to piss off, can tell you, nope, I'm not leaving. And like, insert the Leonardo DiCaprio meme, I'm not leaving. And this entity will not let you back into your body. And in this book, they mention of times that this has happened to people, where then the entity just runs haywire with their body and just, they have to exist in this other realm. But that's an interesting concept, Joe, because I know you know about the occult. And I know that you know that a lot of these occultists throughout history were obsessed with with crossing of the abyss. Mm-hmm. But what if we're talking about the same thing, right? Just a different time period. Same technology, just a different time period.
What they're talking about, what I think they're talking about is, so there's 3 stages to the mysteries, right? We all know this, hopefully. There's the moon, the sun, and the stars. This is why there's 3 stages in every mystery school, right? So the Golden Dawn had the outer system, the inner order, right, of the Rosicrucians, the RRAC, and the higher order of Alpha Omega. Now, there was all kinds of different stuff inside of there, but it's still 3 grades. This is why Masons go, there's nothing higher than a Mason, because Blue Lodge Masonry is a very small symbol of the 3 stages of the Hermetic mysteries. The mother, the moon, the sun, the father, and then the stars, right? So magic is all under the moon. Magic is dealing with the unconscious, retraining your unconscious, learning your powers, all that kind of stuff. And then when you get into and that's the pentagram, all right, the elements in the pentagram. And then when you get into the inner order, the hexagram, that's all about the sun. That's the gold. That's the operation of the sun, alchemy, right? So you get into metals and the planets and all this. You start learning about all these things. When you get into the third order, this is what they're talking about, crossing the abyss, because after you've worked in the physical realm under the moon, and then you are trying to create your solar body in the astral realm, kind of in the moon or above the moon, right? The only other place to go is to become like an adept, a magister, temple, epissimus, whatever they call it, right? But I don't know anybody personally that, I met one guy that said that he had this grade, and there's no way, Like
a master of the nipples of the 3rd order.
Yeah, like there's no way. Scottish Rite Masonry was built upon the system, of Hermetics, right? It was built upon that. They know that. They know that as long as you're in a human body, it ain't happening. You can go out of body and do all kinds of stuff, but there's a cutoff point, man, and there's a cutoff point for a reason. I think some of these magicians went crazy or killed themselves through. I had a buddy of mine that was a mentor when I first started this in like 2014, 2013. This guy was Stephen Ash. This guy was the epitome of a magician, humble, intelligent, like he knew his stuff, dude. And he was an English guy, very kind, Merlin-like, more of actually he's more like a Gandalf like.
Well, Merlin was half demon, half human,
so he's more Gandalf like, just a kind, smart dude. And then I found out later that he was an adept in his order in England, right? An order that a lot of people haven't heard of, and he didn't go around wearing badges and showing people. He didn't even talk about it, but still yet died just not too long after I talked to him, which was heartbreaking for me because I always wanted a mentor in this field, But he was doing alchemical operations, like puffer operations. And this stuff gets dangerous. That's what killed Rigardi and things like that, So this is serious stuff, man. Whether people believe it or not, it's serious stuff. And there's some dark aspects to it. And there's some dangers in there. And when you get so egotistical, you think, well, I understand the whole system now, so I know what I'm doing. And I'm going to cross the abyss, man. There's a show. People start going crazy. They get kind of egotistical about it. And the reason, just on a side note, a side chain here, one of the biggest reasons why I think Crowley left the Golden Dawn was because once you get into the inner order of the Rosicrucians, all of that is surrounded around this Jesus energy. They say Jesus this, Jesus that, like Lieutenant Dan said. It's a lot of Jesus, a lot of Yeshua, a lot of understanding Jesus' teachings and that whole
esoteric Christianity, yeah.
Yeah. So he just switched. He's, well, I'm not doing that. I'm an adept now, which you can make your own magical systems as an adept because you understand this. So he decided to go create Thelema and made it around the Egyptian model, the pagan model, whatever. Big dip, whatever. But I don't know anybody that tried to bring in the new Aeon that I know personally, and I have a direct lineage to Crowley. So the people that were initiated by me, or that initiated me, was initiated by Israel Rigardi. And Rigardi is initiated by Crowley. So I've talked to as many people as I can down this line. None of them were obsessed about crossing the abyss like this guy was. Right? And it's the same thing like with the story of Solomon and stuff. I just honestly believe as long as you're in this body, there's all kinds of cool, esoteric, mystic experiences you can have exploring consciousness. But there is a cutoff line, man. I mean, there has to be. You can't take yourself in this bodily form, into like a nuclear blast and be like, I'm good, It just doesn't make sense. Sorry, I went on a rant there, but...
No, you're good. And Kenneth Grant, talks about how he, I think it's in The Night Side of Eden, he talks about the purpose of this crossing of the abyss ritual, and that always stood out to me because he says that those that fail in these rituals of crossing of the abyss, and essentially what they're trying to do, this is really bizarre, is that they're trying to take their consciousness and how do you say, going back, regress it, right? Transgression, I guess, to put it back into a state that was pre-human, anti-human. This, and he talks about in a very specific ways as a larval and anti pre-human, this larval form. Now, the reason that stood out to me is because I don't know. I know you know about Grant Morrison.
Yeah, you talked about the aliens planted larvae here.
Yes, yeah. He talks about that, and also Carl Jung has this diagram of reality, and on one of the layers of reality, it's like this mandala, his first mandala, I think it was. In one of those layers, there are these little worm beings, these little worm entities. I'm like, dang, that kind of makes sense, right? But Kenneth Grant says that those that fail in this crossing of the abyss, this transgression, this regression, whatever the word is, going back in time, essentially, right? Some can't keep up, and they're tossed, right, into oblivion by the dog-headed monkey, I believe it's called. And he has a little footnote, and this is what I love about Kenneth Grant, because he'll drop the hammer on you while you're reading Grant. but he doesn't. Sometimes he'll drop the hammer, but then just do like a little footnote, and it's like the footnote is like, this attributes to the magical lycanthrope. So I was like, wait a minute. So the people who turn into werewolves were people who are perhaps trying to cross the abyss or do some occult ritual or magical ceremony or operation. You know what I'm saying? So like, why do you put that in there? Like attributed to the magical lycanthrope. And I'm like, okay. And you have all these dogman sightings and all this stuff. I was like, does that have anything to do? Because he also talks about how there's perhaps portals that can open up and these entities can come through from universe B or this other side, this other thing. And you think of Stranger Things and how they open up portals and it's a portal on a tree, which is kind of very similar to the Cliff-Oth. So again, all these concepts are in Hollywood and they put them out there and it just makes you think like why or how. You know, you ever think about this stuff, Joe?
Yeah. You're the only person I know that has told me, because I've said that to people watching Stranger Things too. I'm like, this is the clip-off. And people were like, what? I'm like, yeah, this is the upside down tree, man. This is all the shells and the bad stuff coming from the tree. It's obvious that they've made this whole thing. It's got astral travel in it. It's got remote viewing. Right.
The tunnels of Set. Yeah.
Yeah. It's absolutely got the love story in it. It's got 11. I mean, there's so much like that whole Gemini, thing going on there. There's so much stuff in there. It's not as obvious as the Fifth Element, but it's still pretty obvious. So it's pretty cool to hear someone else say that, because I feel like a crazy person, or like people think I'm crazy when I'm talking about that stuff.
Well, good thing we're on the Fringe FM because, right, Light in the Void, because I can't have normal conversations with people anymore. I can't watch movies anymore. I can't do any of that because for as much as I try to like focus on the task at hand, which is watching the movie or whatever. Like I went to go see when Sonic came out, the Sonic 2.
Sonic, yeah.
I went to go see it with my son. Dude, Sonic is occult AF. Like it was about an artifact giving like all the power in the universe to Dr. Eggman. And then we think about the egg symbolism and how all these occultists were obsessed with the egg. The alchemists were obsessed with the egg as well. So it's like, is there anything that hasn't been tainted with occultism or some sort of magical thing? Because these stories are...
What if I told you that this stuff has been around since the beginning of time and it's egregorically embedded into you so much that people call it predictive programming, but realistically, there's deeper truths that you come to remember through the art that you create.
I'm going to drop a book for you real quick because you're talking about DNA and things being imprinted into your DNA. I don't know if you've ever heard of Vincent Bridges, but this is relevant to the conversation because it's got to do with Enochian. And in this book, The Ophanic Revelation, Angelic Science, and the End of Time.
Nice.
Have you ever read this?
Cool.
Have you ever read this book?
No, it looks cool, though.
So essentially, he talks about how Enochian maybe perhaps is something tied to our DNA. Like it's somewhere in our DNA and essentially it lays dormant and you're able to activate it. And that's what happened with John Dee and Edward Kelly. Again, I'm not going to spoil the rest, but...
Yeah, but one of them was trying to sleep with the other one's wife and stuff like that, too.
Well, I just told you about the ritual to create a homunculus that you got to beat the cow carcass with a dog penis. So, these entities on the other side are weird, Joe. They want to get weird.
Yeah, see, things seem beautiful until it's like, you gotta inseminate a horse, or I need to sleep with your wife. I think it was John Dee that wanted to sleep with Kelly's wife in order for all this to happen, or was it the other way around?
Listen, Joe, the angels spoke, and you got to do what the angels say. So when they told Kelly that they needed to do that, it wasn't Kelly, it was the angels, Yeah,
what are you going to do, right? It's like blame it on the alcohol, man. I can't help it. That's
what are you going to do? These entities, they want to get down. Right? They want to watch us get down. So again, that's the part that everyone remembers, but I've read the journals. I have them in hard copy here next to me. I have all of them. And there's a lot more to it than that. But yeah, there is this trickster entity, this trickster archetype that will slip in there as well, right? And lead you astray. But I think it's all part of the process. And we talked about Crowley. What a better trickster, joker archetype than him. I mean, he wrote a lot of good stuff, but he also wrote a lot of BS. You know what I'm talking about. I mean, all the other stuff that people don't talk about. Right?
Yeah, the stuff that makes him look like a complete moron, an egotistical, crazy guy.
Yes.
They don't want to talk about that.
No. And I'm not, talking about white stains and all this other stuff. Like, there's more to that.
When Celia farts. Yeah.
Yeah. So
crazy.
It just makes you think, you have to sometimes, take some BS to get to the truth, whatever that is. If these guys even knew what it was, I don't think they really truly knew what they were dealing with. And when I say them, I'm talking about these occultists, these alchemists, everyone. I think that they were experimenting in order to find out what it was, right? And they were all in different parts of the process.
Well, the funny thing is I think the Golden Dawn teachings are beautiful. Beautiful, spiritually, honestly. It's all about love and, not free love, but you know what I mean? Like just love, right? So it spoke to me my entire life. When you get to Enochian, though, things get a little shifty. And this is why, like, a lot of original members of the Golden Dawn started bouncing. Paul Foster Case, Arthur Edward Waite. A lot of people spoke up and they're like, look, the teachings that we have up to this point are great, and they've changed our life. We're magicians now. We want to learn about Christ, and now we want to learn the secrets of Christ. Let's do this Rosicrucian thing. But first, we have to do Enochian, and that backstory doesn't really go that. We just talked about that. Like, you're going to give me an entire language to say to angels that I'm really not sure that I've ever heard of some of them. And they're supposed to help me. I mean, some of these angels are terrifying. And most of the magicians that talk about this stuff, even the ones that are loose, like Stephen Skinner and other magicians that are just like, just invoke demons. It doesn't matter. When you talk about Enochian, they're always like, oh, be careful.
Yeah.
Don't get in, be careful with that. And that's because they've had some real damn experiences with it. So I wouldn't jump headfirst into it.
No. When it comes to Enochian, that's something I've heard as well, where it's a very powerful type of system. And also the whole Golden Dawn thing, it did get weird for them. And it got weird because they wanted to, I don't know if you've ever heard of the ceremony to marry an elemental. And then
who did that? Was it Mather's wife?
What's her name? Moina or something?
Yeah, Moina Mathers.
Moina, whatever her name was. But so my next episode that I'm working on, that I'm going to be recording, is on elementals. And obviously it links to Paracelsus. And I thought I'd do like a quick, elementals episode. Like, this is quick. Air, wind, fire, et cetera, all this stuff, right? And when I peeked my head down the rabbit hole of elementals, it got deep, and it got deep real quick. And I found myself in this marriage ceremony of the Golden Dawn to elementals. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, what? And then, like, obviously that involves intercourse as well. So if you think of the logistical parts of that, right? And I mean, just use your imagination, right? So that you could see how that would get sour real quick, right? And is that really the angel speaking this time, or is it somebody else, or is it the elemental? The elemental wants you to do it, Joe. Listen to.
People ask me all the time, like they're like, "Hey, should I join a secret society or should I do this on my own?"
Joe, I get at least 2 emails every few months telling me of people who are like, I joined such and such organization and they're a ripoff and they're scamming me. They lied to me. It's like, listen, this is what I tell everybody. I'm an armchair occultist, right? I'm not going to do any of this stuff. The only thing,
you're not out drawing circles and doing crazy stuff.
No, the only thing I do do, Joe, is, and I do it mostly to troll. I'll take like 33, like my homunculus owner's manual is 33 pages long. Or I'll take, if I'm writing a journal, I'll make the font 33 or 216 or 420 or 418, whatever it is. Like I'll just do that and I'll put it in my work. That's it.
People tripping like, oh, he's doing this on purpose. He's a secret Illuminati, blah, blah, blah.
My episode's 2 hours and 23 minutes long, right? Like 2, 2, 3. It's like, oh, wow, look at this. Illuminati confirmed, like whatever. Like I'll do that stuff. But as far as how you said, drawing circles and triangles and all this stuff out here, I'm not.
Magic in itself, like the elemental grades of magic in itself are harmless. They're harmless. Other than you're going to invoke stuff like if you got mommy issues, daddy issues, money issues, health issues, things like that are going to come to the forefront. And you're going to have to deal with them, right? It's transformation. It's just going up the tree. It's when you become an adept and you decide if you want to go down that road of understanding the deeper mysteries of Christ, or do you just want to go do your own thing, right? And a lot of these people are not in they're not in magic, regardless of what they say, for transformation, right? They're not in it for enlightenment, transformation, understanding who they are, or surrendering to their higher self. It comes down to it, and you'll see it in these older orders. The truth comes out the higher the grades these people get, like what they're really about. Oh, well, this guy's going to start a temple over here. We'll do a magical war, or I'm going to marry an elemental, and it's ridiculous, right? And some of it is stupid enough that this is why Rigardi put out all the work. Dion Fortune left, started her own group. Paul Foster Case left, started his own thing, because there were good people that wanted to like keep this stuff going in a sense that I don't want to call it good, but it wasn't just about power or trying to do something weird, or be the weird person.
I'm talking about, I was talking about homunculus at the beginning, but then here is the OTO having a ceremony to marry an elemental. So it's like, this is obviously a train of thought that's not too far fetched, right? So it's ideas that will be entertained. How far they are entertained, who knows, right? How far you can push those limits. But that's a pretty weird, that's a pretty out there idea, concept. You know what I mean? Like that whole thing. So, going back to the homunculus, if you think about that, it's not too far fetched now. If it was like this mental thing that you would bring forth, like an imaginary friend type of thing, maybe, right? Who knows? But probably. The problem with having these texts out there and all these things that, right, for the initiate, it means one thing. For the uninitiated, it means something completely different. And for a fact, there's a Florida man out there who is taking these instructions and doing it word for word and trying to create a homunculus in real life.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man. I mean, when I got curious doing this stuff, I took Gordon White's books and went to the crossroads, straight to it. I was like, if there's a devil, I want to talk to him. I don't want anything from him, but I'm sick of wonder. I'm sick of being. That came from a more of a like, why am I afraid of this thing? And essentially, what you're doing is you're just playing with your psyche. I mean, you go out to a crossroads somewhere late at night by yourself, a certain time in the morning. You do these invocations and say every single name the devil's ever been called. You don't think that's not going to activate something in your unconscious to start freaking you out after a while? And if he doesn't show up, you go back again and back again until something happens, right? So people don't understand how powerful their imaginations are to begin with. Terrence McKenna got in the psychedelic realm, and these elves were showing him how to create physical matter from their hearts, right? And they're like, focus in their hearts, and as soon as he would give into astonishment, they'd be like, well, look, focus on what we're doing. It's the same thing with us. Like, we don't really understand our own power, and the second it happens, it either freaks us out or we tell everybody it's the devil. Like, when I was a kid, bro, I used to I used to be afraid of things so much. Like I would lay in my bed and use my imagination, and I could hear like on my pillow. I would just freak myself out. But I could hear your pulse in your ear, and to me it was like that's footsteps, man. Someone's coming to get me, right? That's the kind of mental stuff I had going on, and then my heart would speed up, and I would just face the wall because I'm like, dude, something's coming to get me. There's still a part of me that knows it's the pulse in my ear. But as a child, I don't know why I wanted to freak myself out, And so I turned around in the bed, which faced the hallway. My dad's room was right across the hallway. Pitch black, can't have any lights on, no sound, right? Which freaked me out too. And sure enough, man, there's this like short, fat, just ugly looking thing just sitting in the door looking at me, right? And I felt cornered because I can't go anywhere. My room was tiny, and I just ran through it and ran into my dad's bedroom and freaking out. Like I knew it. It's real. It's real. It's real. Now to him, he's flipping the lights on. He's like, there's nothing here. I saw it. I was awake. I saw the detail. The sumbitch was there. That at the very least should tell us how powerful our imaginations are. I saw an astral figure. Maybe it wasn't physical, but I brought an astral figure to me in the physical world just from focusing and emotion and obsessing on something. You see what I mean? So if these people are doing the same thing with homunculuses and angels and other people's wives and weird stuff, there's no telling what they're manifesting,
I think, and shout out to Emily Moore for this, I think those are the true directed energy weapons. Where they take your attention and they shift it to whatever they want, wherever they want. And that's a hot commodity nowadays. If they can retain that we know that the observer effect is a real thing. If you want to trust mainstream science or seance, whatever it is you want to call it, right? It's all the same thing. I think it's all magic and alchemy. At the end of the day, they're dealing with forces that they don't know what they are. I mean, look at, right? Everyone loves to talk about CERN. It's like they've gotten to the point where they're clashing atoms together to try and get a reaction out of it, try and find some God particle or something or other. I mean, I'm sure there's movies of this. There's Spider-Man, right? They opened up a black hole and it sucked everything into it, right? Like there's concepts about this, but.
And who's smart enough to oversee those people? That's what freaks me out.
I think it's entities on the other side, but I don't think
nobody.
It is.
But we don't have a government official with a notepad going, did you do that right? Did you do this right? Like there's nobody smarter than these dudes. So all they can do is go out and be like, hey, do you guys know what you're doing? Yeah, we know what we're doing. Okay, just safety check. Please don't, cause a black hole. Because they're smarter than everybody.
Yeah.
So
you can't tell them otherwise.
They're going to do whatever. They're going to take the money, build it, do whatever they want. And that's what happened to Atlantis, man. And that's what they're doing now. And it ain't just CERN. There's people, they're experimenting with energy weapons, psychological weapons. There's all kinds of crap going on now, man.
I think that's what social media and all these different things are. I think they're weapons. They're weapons to spread propaganda and make people do things. And the media, Hollywood and their cinemagicians all together, it's like this amalgamation that comes together. It's the perfect storm. And it's like how Michael Hoffman talks about, right? The regular people are more initiated than the actual initiates in magical orders, because they're exposed to so much, right? Where they're numb to everything that they're seeing, and he's on to it. I mean, and that's why when people approach me, they go, "I want to join, and like all this thing. I want to learn how to shoot fireballs out of my wand or something." I was like, dude, all the knowledge you could ever possibly need is in these books. Just read. You don't have to join anything to tell no one's going to tell you the stuff. No. Just go out. No,
there's nothing. There's nothing that's verbally. There used to be, but there's nothing now that's verbally that I'm aware of. That's verbally handed down and only verbally handed down. The Kabbalah used to be that way, right? But it's not anymore. The secrets of alchemy used to be that way. It's not anymore. The only reason why you would do it is for fellowship. It's because you don't trust yourself. And you need someone else to help you say, yeah, that's right. Oh, no, you're thinking good there, you know. But I got to tell you, man, as a practicing magician, it's a scary, I can see why people do it, because it's a scary road. It is. Because you put yourself in the twilight zone constantly, you know, while everybody else sits around and laughs.
I'll take your word for it, Joe.
You see what I mean? So it's a way of life. I mean, anybody could study hermetics and be a magician. Like if you studied hermetics enough, just the 7 laws of hermetics, you could go around and say, I understand metaphysics. I understand how this stuff works now. And then live your life magically, just based on those principles. You don't have to do any set ritual you read in a book or anything. You could just do it based on those principles.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I always tell everyone, just don't be a piece of garbage and love one another and treat each other with respect. And that's pretty much it, right? That's the 10 Commandments at its core. You don't have to do all the other extracurricular stuff. And I mean, I grew up religious. Not a lot of people know, but I was born and raised Pentecostal Christian. And I mean, Pentecostal, they jump around, they do backflips, they faint, they do all that stuff. Yeah. But I'll tell you one thing that I've learned from my years in the worship group is that the Holy Spirit or whatever it is, that energy is a real thing. That thing that when it manifests itself, you can feel it in the air. You know, that's a real thing. And I believe in God. I don't believe in the establishment that it's turned into, but I do believe in God. I do believe in Jesus Christ. And I believe he was a real person. Like some people sit there and like, oh, it's Christ consciousness. Like whatever, who cares if he was, right? He was teaching you to not be a piece of garbage at the end of the day, right? Be a good person. You know what I mean? Yeah. And he performed what we call magic. Some call miracles.
Alchemy. Yeah. Well, if it's, I heard people say, well, you never heard him do any ceremonies. And what are you talking about? Or a guy told him that, you know, like he was blind, he picked up mud and rubbed it in his eyes. And he said prayers and all kinds of stuff of gratitude and thankfulness. You know, that's, quote, magic, right? Like he did all kinds of stuff that was ceremonial. We do things ceremonial based on his life. So I don't think people should be afraid of ceremony. I think they should just be afraid of misinformation and misguided people, You know, Crowley brought in Thelema and created an entire religion based on hermetics, what he understood about hermetics. It wasn't just magic, it was hermetics, right? Like, and I think he achieved, at least on a psychological and mass psychological sense, what he set out for. There are thousands of Thelemites now, and it's a religion. And they have a book that tells them, damn the weak, right? Like, peck out the eyes of Jesus, damn the weak, do whatever the hell you want to, as long as it's in love. I mean, it sounds a little evil sometimes.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Just be a hedonist. It doesn't matter, you know?
Yeah, I'm not down with that. So, but I'm not hey, to each their own, right? I respect everyone as long as they respect me. And as I always tell everyone, as long as you keep the kids out of it, what happens between two consenting adult furries is whatever happens between them two. I mean,
or 30 or whatever, you know.
You want to dress as a homunculus and do stuff, you know, with another homunculus, it's all good.
Now, Lon Maladuquette, I don't know, have you ever talked to him? You ever had him on the show?
I haven't had him on, but I'm familiar with his work.
He's convincing when it comes to not to make me a Thelemite, but he's convincing as a magician to me when it comes down to, you know, talking about love. And a lot of his books talk about that whole concept, you know, the whole fifth element concept. I'll just say that. So.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I think that's what we all strive for, like, right, this indescribable thing. And I think you feel that for the first time when you have kids.
Oh,
when
yeah,
when you
man.
hold your newborn homunculus for the first time, you feel love.
Everything's a homunculus now, isn't it?
Joe, when are we going to open up the lines? I got people writing to me that they want to call in.
All right. Well, I got to take a break first, and then we'll open them up. Because I take 3 breaks a night. We ain't took one. You know,
What happened there, bro? You missed. Did you not hit the break button?
No, I'm on the backup system right now, so I'm like talking to you, building commercials as we're talking. So I have to like give some shouts out to some people because they paid for it, right? Of course, Mark's trying to call in. He definitely wants to chime in on this one. All right, look here. We'll take a break real quick and then be right back. Make sure I do this right. I don't know how to do this on your video thing. I guess I'll just stop my cam. This is like 5 minutes, y'all. 5 minutes.
It's all good, bro. I'll edit it out.
It seems like a lot of people are trying to impress and be authority figures and name drop and, you know,
I'm dropping homunculus, bro. That's what I'm dropping.
You got to have fun, man. Like, obviously, I'm not in this for my success if you guys hadn't figured that out yet. But when I'm not having fun, you'll know because things will go to shit. But having fun is the best way to do it.
Absolutely, bro. That's the secret. Have fun and talk about stuff you want to talk about.
There's Mark. Hold on, let me make sure you're...
Speaking of homunculus.
Hold on, let me put you on a different cable so you don't get all crossed up here. I'm a genius when it comes to this stuff. All right. Mark, are you there, brother?
Hello, Juan.
Oh, wow. It's a little deep voice. What's up, brother?
Love a man with a deep voice.
Yeah, why is your voice so deep?
Listener, first-time caller. I'm actually the real Juan, and the Juan you have on now is a homunculus clone that escaped our underwater pizza factory.
Yeah.
All hail, Shakespeare Bodhi, Juan's hidden financier, which makes the Juan on Juan podcast possible, and also the shaking of the booties possible. This is not Thomas, as I said. This is the real Juan. I didn't pre-record anything. The underwater pizza factory has really good Wi-Fi, thanks to Elon Musk. This is a Google call.
Wait a minute, bro.
Show yourself. Did they hang up?
Yeah. What was that?
I got no clue. They hung up. That's it.
You being trolled, dude? What's going on?
I think so. Yeah, dude. I think my homunculus might have gotten loose. I got to check my garage, bro. I'll be right back.
Well, I think I gave that away. That was Mark Steves' number.
Oh, there you go, Mark. We know it's you, bro.
It comes up on the ID.
Oof. You got it, bro. That was pretty good, though.
So you got a secret financier? You're not telling me these things? I need a secret financier.
It's called a 9 to 5.
Yeah, it's called a real job.
Yeah, it's called a JOB. That's the financier. No, but thankfully, there's people who do support the show. So shout out to all my patrons and supporters on YouTube and stuff like that. So shout out to them. All the money goes right back into the show and to bring quality. So, but that was funny. I like that. Gonna use that as my ringtone.
It's the same thing, dude, that I do. All the money, all the money people donate to the Fringe goes into the Fringe. But the LTV money I like to keep for myself. You know, I just think I'm worth it.
The what money?
The LTV money, right? Like the money for just the radio show. And I've had people donate and be like, this is strictly for LTV, not the station. And I'm like,
no, I got you.
What? I'm just going to turn it into one thing. It's just going to be Fringe FM before it's all over with.
I told you, you gotta, the coherence of the brand has to be, linear throughout all platforms. So if you put something together, bro, everyone knows Lighting the Void. Let's go, bro. Just do it.
It sucks. I hate it. I got it tattooed on my arm now.
Oh man. That's your, somebody asked about that sigil and what it means. And I told them I have to call in, but
yeah, you got to call in. I'm not just going to start saying, that's a call in for sure.
Oh, that's a call in. All right. So they got to call in if they want to find out what the sigil is. That they were asking me about it.
Yeah. It could just mean absolutely nothing. And I thought it looked cool, but that's not true. So
I've done that as well.
I got this tattooed on my arm and I went to New York. I thought it would be a cool thing to do because I was on my I mean, I was really pumped, dude. Driving around the country. I've been in Arkansas my whole life. Haven't seen anything outside the sticks of Arkansas. And now, you know, I got enough Patreon money to like travel and go places and live in other places, even when COVID was happening. And I don't need a lot of money like a lot of people do. So if I made $1,200 to $2,000 in a month, that was enough for me and my Honda to go across the world, you know. But there were times that I found myself in places where I didn't have $20 and I was, you know, thousands of miles away from home. But I was living a magical life, man. I had faith in it. And I promise you, something manifested every single time. Every single time. Right on time.
What was your stripper name, Joe?
Yeah, I can't strip. I can't strip. Like, I don't have a strip. I wasn't doing anything on the side. I wasn't slinging dope. I was just doing this. Even when the homeboy tried to corner me in Arizona, I still got out of there.
Do you feel like maybe there's something, I mean, you could call it a holy guardian angel. Are they supposed to watch out for you? Is that what the whole thing about that is? Like the holy guardian angel is supposed to like have your back?
Yeah, for sure.
Do you think something's watching over you? Because I feel like that.
Sorry.
I feel like that's been something in my life that I always have like something watching over me.
Absolutely. Mark, we know it was you, dude.
Hey, Joe and Juan, first-time caller, long-time listener. I have a question. I have an ex-wife who I want to get even with. I'm talking royally screw her over. I'm wondering how much I could get away with while astral projecting. Could I float into her house and put baby powder in her hairdryer?
Possibly.
Or throw tacks in her waterbed? I may be crazy, but this is the fringe.
Yeah, no, you, who is that? That's not Mark.
No, I don't know who that is.
No, but you could, but there would be some, depending on her knowledge of the astral realm, how protected she is, you have to deal with some karma too. But if you could probably freak her out a little bit. I don't know that you'd have to be pretty talented to toss baby powder on her and stuff, you know. I could barely knock on wood, you know, out of body.
Crowley says you can barely knock a book off a shelf or something.
Yeah. I mean, so the worst thing you could do to her is freak her out. Any other questions?
Well, that is great.
We're making him think on the spot. You see, he's trying to find something else.
Yeah.
He can't. Somebody said, I know who that is. Who is that? Whose voice is that?
I don't know.
No more questions.
No more questions. All right. No, so it feels like we're doing some virtual Ouija board or something. We're waiting for answers back from the other side.
Could be using an AI voice, right? Like Mark.
Shut up. This is live.
Yeah.
Shut up. This is live.
Yeah, dude, something's weird going on here. Is this AI voice?
100%, bro. But dude, it's gotten so good where it sounds spot on. I mean, check this out.
I just figured out how to do a whole new show.
Shut up.
Space is fake and gay.
Oh, bro, the Fringe FM's about to take off. Now we're about to just do all kinds of cool shit now with these AI voices. Put Mark on the phone.
This is Lewis Black, not Mark.
Put Mark
Steves.
on the phone.
This is Lewis Black, not Mark Steves.
Who's Lewis Black? Type it in, Mark. Tell us who Lewis Black is.
A comedian.
Comedian.
Got your number.
Oh, so
all right, you guys caught me.
Yeah. So I heard you can use like Rogan voices and all kinds of stuff too, man.
No, you can't. You can't use Rogan voices, but we did just prank you with Juan's very own voice. So yeah, that was brought to you by Homunculus Incorporated, a new company that I just started, and our main way that we're going to be making money right now is just by prank calling radio shows. So if anybody wants to send money to my Venmo, that'd be great. And yeah, thanks for letting me call and interrupt the show.
This is epic. I'm serious, man. You just gave me like 1,000 bits ideas to do. Seriously.
Don't thank me. Thank the paranoid American. He's the genie in the bottle over here.
Oh, is he over there? All right.
Oh, no, I'm out.
Well,
yeah, we We just pulled like a middle school style prank phone call on you guys. We've been over here listening to the show, waiting for the opportunity.
Yeah, but you might have done a little Freudian slip there. Which one of you actually does want to go mess with their old lady in the astral realm? Mm-hmm. Even if it's a joke, psychology says that you're still curious about it. The fact that you brought it up.
I'm going to go astrally fart in her face because she's being mean to me. Imagine those are the noises you hear in the middle. Like, who's that?
Joe, Joe, I know you well, and I think you know me well. I think you caught me red-handed, Joe.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, I know you pretty well, man. Look, don't do no astral anger. That's a bad place for anger. You know, Robert Monroe actually ran into a guy that was still trying to bang a girl in the astral realm. If you read it, I'm serious, man. Like,
what a loser.
Yeah, there's exactly right. There's losers on the earth, and that guy's even worse. So apparently you take your addictions into the astral realm. And he talks about this in like the second book, where he just runs into this dude who's just like stark naked, just slanging, wanging out, right? And Robert Monroe's like looking at him, and he's like, "What are you doing, man?" And he's like, "Well, I've been trying to hook up with this girl," but he called it piece of ass in the book. But he's like, "I've been trying to hook up with this girl for the last 20 years, and I'm going to get mine." And he's literally taking his body, his naked astral body, and jumping onto this girl's bed, like falling through the bed, trying to get with her. And he's stuck there, dude. Like, he's stuck in that, like, some kind of weird cycle where he can't get out.
Is that where the ectoplasm comes from, bro?
Tangent this got thrown on too.
Was that where ectoplasm comes from? Maybe. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, that's Paranoid American. Yo, what's up, Thomas?
Yeah, he's been here the whole time. Speaking of, I was listening to this interesting book on tape called The Genetic Genesis, and this guy named Albert Potts, he's a linguist. He goes in and he decoded using like his knowledge of Paleo-Hebrew Genesis in the Bible, and it's really interesting. Take it or leave it, his interpretation of what he found, but he found a totally different translation when he applied some of the things that he learned as a linguist to Genesis, the original version of it. And there was descriptions of reptilians using different scientific tools like a centrifuge, and talking about DNA and how these basically reptilians imbued humans with the ability to procreate and all this other stuff. And let's just say that it has to do with the green spermatozoa of reptiles.
What book is this?
I got a question though, Mark. Because you said that Paranoid American was your genie. Did you have to rub him to get him out of the bottle? Like, how'd that work? Or were the logistics?
Well, yeah, we're over here in the phone call parallel universe. Unfortunately, we're not in the same room. But no, yeah. To answer Joe's question,
it was an astral projection job.
Yeah, exactly. But to answer Joe's question,
man,
this is The Genetic Genesis by Alfred Potts.
The Genetic Genesis by Alfred Potts. You guys have way more time to read stuff than I do. If I wasn't doing this freaking radio thing every day and every night, I could just like study and just do a regular podcast. I want to do that.
Well, Thomas and Juan do a podcast about books called the Occult Book Club. I know Juan already mentioned it during this broadcast, but yeah, Joe, you should do something like that where you read on the air. You know, I know not every book you can do that with, but Juan and Thomas,
know how to read, Joe?
Digging up really
old. I know how
books.
to read. I got the sexiest voice in the South. Of course, I know how to. All I do is read.
Wonderful,
right, bro. Just making sure you know how to read, dude, because you know you have to.
I might. That's a very egotistical thing for me to say, but honestly, I might mess up some words. Like I've read. If you go back and like I read all of Psychic Self-Defense on the air. It's on YouTube, right? And there's times I just stopped and I was like, I don't know what this word is. I don't know why they're making stuff so complicated. Because they do. All those old occult books, they can't just be square and just say stuff in like real words. They got to find some fifth word that's a synonym for another word just so they sound smart. I get tired of it.
It happens to me all the time, though. I mispronounce words all the time. So it's all good, dude.
But you guys are digging into material. Like I've read Fulcanelli so many times. I've read Paracelsus. I've read this stuff a million times, and Juan's coming out and be like, hey, you don't remember this like homunculus thing? Like my brain just passed it. It just passed it. Somehow, you know, it wasn't important to me at the time.
Yeah, well, homunculuses seem to creep into every angle of this stuff.
Because, you know, one of the things that you have to do, and Mark can relate with this, Paranoid American can relate with this, you have to also set yourself apart from the crowd, because there is a lot of people doing the same thing. So what can you do to set yourself out? So you have to dig deeper than the next guy. You got to create greater comic books than the next other guy, right? You got to do better interviews than the next other guy, whatever it is. You have to set yourself apart. So that's why when we're digging, we go deep, homeboy, because we're trying to find the homuntech underground.
Well, you just did Sam Tripoli's quote there. That's not really setting yourself apart.
You're right, Joe. I'm not. But shout out to Sam Tripoli. Sam Tripoli is awesome.
The homunculus is... I think of monkeys every time I hear that word. So I don't know why, but like that's definitely set you apart. And the Nicolas Cage shit you've had going on since the beginning back there. But no, but seriously.
Nicolas Cage.
Seriously though, like what you guys are doing is impressive. All of you. It always has been.
Well, speaking of impressive, I don't want to, steal Juan's spotlight here. So we've been on here too long. We've been on here too long. Shout out to Paranoid American. Go and check out everything Paranoid American. And thanks for letting us interrupt the show. I'll leave you guys to it.
We're just here to cause trouble. That's the main reason we're here.
Yeah.
Move to Florida. Mark, get your ass down here.
All right. Yeah. Well,
you're the only non-Florida boy, man. That's right.
That's right. Well,
Parrot, I just
cold up here soon.
Before we leave, I just wanted to mention patent 3216423, which was approved in 1963. It's a centrifugal force birthing table. Just check that out.
Wait, how are they going to keep the baby from flying out? That doesn't even make any sense.
It's the whole thing. You can look at the entire U.S. patent. It's 4 pages. It details it in as much detail as you possibly could. It's called the Blonsky birthing table.
Joe, you ever seen somebody spin in place in the water? Just imagine your wife spinning in place as she, gives
There's no way in hell I'm putting my girl on a merry-go-round and let's hope we catch the baby. We don't know when it's going to come flying out.
No, it goes in the water.
There's like a fence. There's like a safety line, like you're at a circus.
You're joking, right? Like, when did this thing come out?
No, dude, it's called the Blonsky birthing table from 1963, U.S. patent approved.
Yeah, how many people have actually
hold on.
used
the Blonsky birthing table? Oh my goodness, dude! He's right.
Patent 3216423, November 9th, 1965.
It's real.
That's so crazy.
You're welcome. There's got to be some kind of occult ritual related to this. There's no way there's not.
I can see some people in black robes like standing around it.
This can be a sport. This could be like catch the homunculus.
Wow. Waiting on the baby to come out. Just sling out. And whoever catches it is the one that gets blessed.
It's just like a gravitron.
I don't think you're supposed to put G.
Imagine just the bodily fluids going everywhere, dude. Oh, man.
Make a honey. Hey, just waiting on the baby to come out, man.
The ectoplasm just everywhere.
That's insane.
It kind of sounds, based on what Alfred Potts was saying, it kind of sounds like that's what was going on with this whole Genetic Genesis book and his interpretation of Genesis. I mean, please don't be offended, listeners, if you are, devout Christian, but he's basically saying that a group of horny reptilians were flying through the solar system like Star Trek, and they saw Earth, and they're like, oh, there's some monkeys down there. Let's go down there and fornicate. Let's go get it on.
I'm going to stick my
yeah.
in that.
And then they came down here with their science labs, and they, put women in big tubes and, did all kinds of crazy stuff with them, and then gave them a bigger brain, and now we're all humans.
So This is where hentai came from. Got it.
Oh man, you guys are the greatest, man. You really are, all of yous. I'll make something happen. We're doing an event down here in Florida. That's gonna happen.
I told you, bro. We have to with Old World Florida and everybody, the whole crew. Only Florida only though. So sorry, Mark.
Yeah, unless you decide to move here, like you just move here.
No, I'll move.
No, or you can snort bath salts. If you do that, then you're like an honorary Floridian for at least 72 hours.
Even from Connecticut, I'm a Floridian. Okay. Well, let me say this. If there's anybody listening in Florida that knows a place I can move into, get in touch. MyFamilyThinksI'mCrazy.com. That's the best way to find out about me.
Like you're going to get calls and all kinds of stuff.
Hey, if they could sleep 2 people, we're moving there.
You know how many people said that to me when I'm like, hey, I'm about to be late on my rent again. We need your support, dude. I'm like doing this thing. Like I'm doing this thing hardcore. And people call me up. Joe, you can bring your tower and you can stay in my camper if you want to. Like I've heard this so many times, man.
The secrets
this sounds
and
like
Paranoid
the
American
audience for this request.
Yeah.
The secret to being able to do this full time. You want to know the secret? And the secret that Manly P. Hall held, and the secret that Steve Ross, I just recently interviewed him. He revealed the secret. The secret is the esoteric, occult, homunculus sugar mama. You need a sugar mama. And once you have that, boom, you can read all the books you want. You can write freaking the secret teachings of all ages. You can travel around the world and collect relics and artifacts. Dude, that's the secret.
Bust somebody out right now, but this is
what happened.
What he said is 100% true. I went to the Ozark UFO conference, and Race Hobbs, I'm just going to say his name, the owner of KGRA Radio, the one that had Fade to Black and all this other, and this dude just sits around and does radio all the time, and I got jealous, and I said, how do you do it? And he told me exactly. He wasn't playing when he said it. He was like, I got me one. You got to get you a sugar mama, man. That's the only way you're going to be able to do this, bro. I got one, and one of my producers got one. I said, dude, that's not how I get down, but thanks for the advice. But he was dead serious.
I'm getting a transmission from the angels right now, Joe. Hold on. Yeah.
Wow.
That's exactly what we suspected.
Yeah. I think I have a sour mama. So whatever mama takes money from you, I have that mama.
I just call it mama.
Yeah.
Just the regular one.
Yeah. My girlfriend's more like bitter sweet, maybe. It takes the money and then she's sweet.
No, my girlfriend's actually helped me, but then there's you better get up off your ass and do something before I kill you, You
got to mow the lawn, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I hope my girlfriend never hears this. Otherwise, I'm going to be hearing that too.
I'll make sure she hears it.
Well, I think this is my time to go. Joe, Juan, I'll leave you to it.
No,
Juan,
dude, let's get you in trouble before you go.
Well, if you want to have me on, I'll stick around. You already skipped the first 3 breaks, so I don't know how long we're going, but I'm down to hang out.
I have to talk to Juan off the air. He's got some magical secrets he's going to teach me about how to be the best radio host on the planet.
Well, yeah, you get a homunculus on your shoulder. He just doesn't tell you that there's actually 2 homunculus on your shoulder, the little bad one and the good one. So just be careful which one you listen to.
That's a whole other show, man.
That's why it's the Juan on Juan, because you don't ever know which one you're going to get.
It's a whole other show.
Juan is the homunculus.
Yeah.
He's become it.
I got a feeling if we do an event, we probably should make sure that it's not just us You should probably bring your ladies because I got a feeling this group we'll get in trouble. Like we're gonna get in trouble.
That's fine.
With Paranoid American 100%, bro. That dude's a degenerate. Trouble, man. He's telling us about the centrifugal force birthing tables, but apparently there's a net that catches the baby, so you don't have to stand out and try and catch the baby.
How am I supposed to sleep thinking about that, dude? Like, I love babies. Like fishing. Jesus Christ, man. You don't got kids, do you, Mark?
No.
No. See, it's different when you got kids and you've actually seen childbirth, like face to face, and then you start thinking about it being on like a Ferris wheel. I don't know. Thanks for that, Paranoid American. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I wrote a paper on it in college, so you're welcome.
Are you serious? We got to read this, man. Why is this not like on the internet right now? Why don't you have a Substack about it or something?
Ooh.
You got to sub to the Patreon.
Maybe
for that.
I do. You just don't know, man. I've got many names.
He's got a comic book about it, let alone a Substack.
Well, all right, we're going to get out of here. Juan, you want to put out your links, brother? Tell everybody what you're doing.
Yeah, all my links, tjojp.com. I'm on YouTube, any major podcast platform, patreon.com/the Juan on Juan podcast if you want to support. And yeah, get your copy of the Homunculus Owner's Manual. I also have a comic book, The Chosen Juan, published by Paranoid American. I have an Occultist Monday, which is a journal that I do on occult and esoteric topics. But yeah, pick one of these bad boys up. tjojp.com. It'll link you over to my Ko-Fi store. And I appreciate you having me on, Joe. This was fun. Great time. And I can't wait to do an event with all the boys and get everyone together and make some homunculus, bro.
Make some homunculus. I knew it. All right, guys. Well, go to the website. What's the website? It's not the one-on-one podcast. It's TJOJP.
TJOJP.com. So it's the first letters, TJOJP.com. And yeah, everything's on there. On my RSS feed, YouTube channel, Patreon, all that stuff.
Right on. We'll see you guys, what's today? Thursday. We'll see you guys next week. Music shows. We got Jason Quick coming on next week. And maybe we'll get Mark on too. Maybe Thomas.
Yeah, do it.